lie dormant. And this is our first meeting since 2020 when the COVID started. At this stage, I'm thinking strongly to start the association to run it privately. So please tell your friends and family about it. So the meeting from as of next year will be the first Tuesday in the month. Dues are $20 per year, and because of the dues, you become a voting member. Our bank account is with Sandy Spring Bank, located in Maplewood. So, without any hesitation, I'd like to introduce the candidates running for District 3, Howard County. But among us, we have two other candidates that are running for the delegate position. I like to introduce them, but they will introduce themselves better than I can. So, let's start with Mr. Walsh.
Hi, my name is Pat Walsh, and I am running for State Delegate, District 13. The theme of my campaign is Truth and Freedom, and all things will be addressed with the luminance of truth and accenting our constitutional freedoms. So it's very nice to meet you.
Thank you. Our second candidate for delegate position, Mr. Chris Yates.
Yeah, can you see me okay?
Can you have the note, please?
I'm Chris Yates. I'm a 35-year resident of Howard County. This is not my first time. This is my third attempt to run for delegate representing you all. I'm looking at this time being the final time. I think we're going to do it.
Okay, thank you. Now, to see why we want to get into the forum. This is the format of the forum. It's just simple, and I'm hoping that it lasts less than an hour. And after an hour, it's a freedom to speak with candidates one-to-one. We have here ladies before gents, so I'll start with Christiana. Dixon. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us where you're living and something about your personal self. Then we have Mr. Bill Campbell. He will do the same, tell us his full name, where he lives, and something about his personal self. And the second question will come after.
Sorry, do you want to say like how we're running, or just sort of like a brief person?
Briefly.
Sure. So I'm
We're
going
going to say the second question would be why you're running.
Okay.
So, okay. So first we do your personal, then we going to do why you run. Then this third question is what's your platform? What you hope to bring to the community? What you expect to do for us? So basically that's it.
Great. Thank you. I'm Christiana Rigby. I am your current council person for District 3, and I'm running to continue to represent us. And I live near Bowman Bridge, and I grew up in Howard County. I was born at Howard County General. My parents still live here, and I'm very honored to represent the community that I was raised in.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Bill Campbell. I'm a 48-year resident of Howard County. I love this place. I grew up in New England. I came down here raised by family. There wasn't much here when we first moved. There were a lot of farms. It's changed, and for many of us, it's changed pretty well, but it is now getting a little seedy. And my concern is that if we don't take some firm action in this election, we're going to be on an uncorrectable course where the quality of life in Howard County isn't going to be what we want it to be. And I want to change that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Christina. Can you say, please, why you're running for the position of county council? Christina first and Bill.
So I'm running to continue to represent us because I agree with Mr. Campbell that the status quo is not good enough for Howard County, and that we can do better. The choices that have been made in the past have led us to our current reality today, and I've worked hard over the last 4 years to increase school funding, support our seniors, and make sure we have a great quality of life. So those are the things I'm focused on.
Thank you, Christina. Bill?
I'm running because I'm angry. 4 years ago, I went to the investiture of the current county council and the county executive. I heard that that election had been all about the children. I look at the children in my district, particularly in the part that's in Owen Brown and Columbia, and it's horrible. The schools are failing. The affordable housing has comments from the residents that give one pause. People are being robbed in the parking lot. My girlfriend is afraid to walk the dog. Mice, rats. We have to change these things. We can't condemn little kids to a bad education. The Cradle Rock Elementary School and the Lake Elkhorn Middle School have failed. They are not failing, they have failed. 19.9% of the kids at the elementary school are proficient in English and math. 23.5% are proficient at the middle school. Your schools here are merely mediocre, but mine are horrible. And the crime has skyrocketed. We just had a bust of a fentanyl ring in Howard County. We had the bust of a burglary ring that was hitting high-end homes. Our average for property crimes is equal to the national average. And things like rapes, which at 2016 weren't even around, have blossomed. This is unacceptable. The county council has a role in fixing these things. And I want to do something to turn this around and make this the kind of place that my children grew up in.
Thank you, Bill. On that note, you mentioned school. So I went to a seminar last week with something to do with mental health. And a point that was raised, but we did not get to discuss it in detail. What happened, it was about social, emotional education in school. Christina, you were there presently as our county council. The same question I'll ask Bill as a competitor. Did you hear anything about social, emotional education in school? And what's this all about, the rumor that it's going to stop or continue, something like that?
Well, as a regular volunteer in the schools, the main way that the social emotional learning is often done. Is it martial arts behind us? Okay. Sorry, so the main way that a lot of that is done is by building relationships in the classroom. There's circle time in the morning, and it's really a way for the students to get to know each other. So they ask a question, and students practice listening, and it's really about building connections. And a lot of the research, when you look at it, it's, we've learned more over the last 20 years about brain and childhood development than we have in the last 100. So we know that if a kid is in in a state where they're very upset, that they're unable to learn. So you have to be able to get them, make sure that they're in a calm and ready state. So by setting the tone in the morning, and I'm really glad we have a former teacher and Board of Ed candidate here, Jackie McCoy, who can probably talk a lot more about how social emotional learning is done in the classroom.
Very much.
You really work to give kids the skills of emotional resiliency and agility. We live in a tough world, and you have to be ready to handle the things that you have to deal with. And so kids are being encouraged and taught to how to sort of manage their emotional inventory. And it's, I have to say, it's been really great as a parent and as a volunteer in the classroom to see how our social emotional learning has gone. The County Council and the County Executive have provided record funding to our schools. We have increased the number of counselors to help our kids with these skills. We've increased mental health professionals in our middle schools because it's a very difficult time, as I think everybody who's ever raised a teenager would attest to. And so we want to make sure that students have that support where they need it, and that it's in the classroom and in school.
Thank you. Sure, Christina. Now, Mr. Bill Campbell, can you shed some light about what you know about social
I don't know much about that. I know that children are precious and they need our care and our love, and we need to get them in an environment where they can learn. However, even if you have that and they're not learning, we're doing something wrong. When I look at the state report cards for Howard County schools, they're abysmal. If we're the best school system in the state, we have a very low bar that we have to reach. These are the overall scores for how did my elementary schools do overall? They didn't meet their annual academic achievement target. How did my middle schools go? They didn't meet their academic achievement market. The high schools just barely, 21 points out of 30. This is unacceptable. I will work with anybody to put stuff in the curriculum that's appropriate. But the first thing that's appropriate and has to be the basis for everything is mathematics and English. If you are not conversant in English, you cannot get an education here. And if you're going to be failing in math and English, you're going to fail in life. And meanwhile, while we say our kids are our most precious thing, these are the temporary school buildings, the mobile classrooms, the trailers that we have, 222 for 5,500 of our kids, 9% of our kids. And when the Kerwin plan is fully implemented, we haven't built any new schools except the high school. We're going to be putting pre-K kids into trailers, and that's unsafe and unacceptable.
Okay. Continue on that trend. How about, you mentioned mathematics and English. How about reading? Because reading comprehension plays a great part.
That's part of English. That's part of English.
That's part of English.
English composition and reading, yes.
Just want to be clear. However, here comes Miss Jackie McCoy. She is running for, introduce yourself, please.
How are you all? I'm Jackie McCoy. I'm running for the Board of Ed. And it's interesting that I walked in right at the moment that you were talking about education. And you spoke very much about the very things that concern me is for the amount of money that we're spending on education. Why are our scores so dismal? And I'm not a person about a lot of test taking, but the reality is that our students are not performing at the level that they should be. And so for me, as a board member, it's about accountability. We have a great superintendent who does, wonderful song and dance, but the question is, how is he being held accountable for the results? I know a lot of people who are at central office, and there's been, this huge reorganization and, a lot of people there, but has that produced any real outcome for our students? And so that's what I want to bring is accountability. And as an educator and a mechanical engineer, I'm about solving problems. And so for me, it's not about song and dance. It's not about whether or not you're a nice person or not. It's are you producing the results for the kind of money that we're spending in accounting for education. So.
Okay, thank you, Jackie.
So you're not an incumbent?
No, there are no incumbents. Okay. They're both open seats.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other question on that line of
Well,
conversation?
one thing
Presently right now?
that Jackie brought up that's really critical. The 900-pound gorilla in the room is the minority student achievement gap. It was huge before COVID. Looking at results from different surveys in different states, we've lost probably 7 to 9% of the achievement level that our children had before COVID. That puts us back in the 1970s as far as education. What are we doing to give these kids a chance to succeed? If we can't make them thrive, at least we could give them the basics. I don't understand why the 6th wealthiest county in the United States, the wealthiest county in Maryland, continues to ignore this. we chase the next shiny object and we don't look at the real issue. And the real issue is they need to be able to read and write. They need to be able to do simple arithmetic to succeed.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'd like to just add on, because I think,
Yeah.
I like this. This is more like a nice conversation
Yeah.
about
Yes.
important issues than,
Yes.
but really, one of the other things that we really need to be looking at is early childhood education and development, because you went through those scores and we said they're not there at elementary. They're a little bit of improvement at middle, and they get there by high. But what if we started earlier? What if we started when it mattered most, 0 to 5? That is when the most brain development happens, and that is when they need the most support, and we offer very little. And we have expanded pre-K, and there's some things coming down from Kerwin, but it's not going to be enough. We recently, actually today, opened a United Way Family Child Care Center to support that need in our community, because what also happened over COVID is that we lost 500 child care spots. It was already a desperate scene to get an infant spot. You had long waiting lists. And then to even have a toddler space, also very competitive, very expensive. We talked earlier about how the average is $30,000 a year for childcare. The situation has become untenable for our families. And so if we're looking at our scores and we're saying, why aren't they coming into kindergarten ready to read and write and learn? It's because we need to invest in that early childhood space. And I think I could talk all night about that because it is so important. But if that's one thing I hope we leave with, it's the importance of investing in early childhood.
All right, Christina, you hit me right on the tummy with that, because before I left Guyana, I was a government employee as an early childhood education tutor. And I could tell you lots of stories about it and the result. And I could tell you it's the best result and the best investment you will give a child. Because once that foundation is there, that's the foundation that will take them through right on to university. I experienced that with the kids that I taught, and I saw them, their grandparents right now, and I saw them, what they become. My niece, who was an abandoned child, she didn't fall, she rise because of that early childhood education. So with that in mind, anytime you have, this is before Bill and both of you, whoever wants to see, you need somebody to help advocate for that child, early childhood education. Count me in.
Okay.
Now, Jackie has a question.
I just want to piggyback on what Christiana was saying. I volunteer for a group called Talk With Me Howard County, and it focuses on those critical years of 0 to 3, when about 85% of the brain is developed, and we do nothing to support parents or the community, because it doesn't have to be some special educator, but if parents knew, if the community knew the importance of those first 3 years, if we just did public service announcements, if we provided opportunities for families to learn what is important, that little bit of investment would mitigate the huge investment that we put in later on in elementary, middle, and high school to mitigate what was not able to be done in those first 3 years. So I'm absolutely on target with you on that.
Coming back to that, Jack, to you, what was my experience? The children there, they're innocent, they're like sponge. But sometimes the parents themselves are not educated enough to handle that. So one of my things, this is to both of you and everybody in this room that is running, that when a person becomes pregnant, part of the education towards going to the delivery room should how to handle a child education. Because if the mother knows, and the father, not only the mother, but the father too, because it takes two. I don't care if they're married or unmarried, because it takes the same process to bring them into the world. They should be educated on their way to the delivery room, what it takes to raise a child and the education, because if they know they are going to want it. You do not really want something that you don't know about. When you know about something, that's when you really more want it. So that is what I would say it should start, because they say it starts from birth. Well, who's giving the birth? The parent, the mother. So
Well, we should have the children in a safe environment. They need to feel safe. Because we have 222 mobile classrooms, and we're going to put more children in mobile classrooms because of Kerwin, we need to make sure that they're not these little children. I know a lot about safety. I was an NTSB safety accident investigator. I was in charge of anti-terrorism and force protection for the United States Coast Guard for 9 years. And I was superintendent of police for the Coast Guard for 9 years with 25 police departments. Those buildings are unsafe for a whole bunch of reasons. And trying to get 15 to 20 toddlers, because they're not much more than toddlers, out of a building in an emergency is a disaster. We will be on the national news. So if you get elected, I want you to scream at the top of your lungs about making sure that little kids, you know, if it's elementary school, maybe, and you have to have it, maybe 5th graders, but certainly not little toddlers.
Absolutely.
I will say predominantly, and maybe Mr. Lovelace, you can touch on this at Forest Ridge, but most of them elementary schools I've been to that have used temporary classrooms are putting the older grade, the secondary grades in there. They're not the sort of K through second.
They're not safe either, but it
No, I was just saying, just so I can put you at ease about that piece.
I'm not
They
at
don't-
ease at all.
No. Sorry, you had said that if we have to use them, your preference would be for the secondary grade. So I just wanted you to know that that is the current.
I have no faith that the current school system will follow your wishes.
Oh, no, these aren't my wishes. These
No.
are the school system policy. But I would really encourage you to go volunteer at Cradle Rock and see.
So I can speak to that. Long Beach High School had a early childhood education program, and when we had school drills and things like that, they were well taken care of. So and we have portables and all of that, but the staff is very well trained, and so I think as long as we have the proper training and we locate the classrooms for the little ones closer to the exits, and that's the case of Long Reach, it won't be a concern of safety. But you're right; those portables have got to go.
A lot of the training from a drill goes out the window the minute the place blows up.
Well, all I can say is if all training will go out the window if you don't repeat it on a regular basis. So you can't just throw up your hands in the air and say, oh my gosh, it'll never happen. They were very well done at Long Beach High School. And I want to assure you that when the planning is done properly, it is safe. And so
you can assure me all you want, I'm not assured.
Okay, well, I know I've lived it, and I'm a person about safety, and I am
too, and I'm not that, this is all.
So in reality, it does work when it's done well.
Can we move on from this topic now? So we have a little taste of what's expected in the future, and some discussion about this to open people's minds and eyes, and what they could start thinking about to bring to the platform. So, I'm going to start with Christina again, ladies before gents. This question is for both of you. What do you expect to bring to us should you win for the next 4 years? Because that's your platform. That's what you're going to bring to us, to the table. Do you have any plans?
So over the next 4 years, we're going to face a variety of things. We're going to face the implementation of Kerwin, which on the council side, we don't deal in the policy, we don't set what the school system does where, we predominantly do the funding, and the Board of Education sets the policy, because both of us get our authority from the state. A lot of folks think that we get the authority from the state and then the Board of Ed is under us, but it's not like a parent-child relationship. It's from the state and we're cousins, essentially. So we're responsible for funding and they're responsible for policy. And I mostly, in my role, just amplify the voices of my constituents who have a school issue, or try to coordinate things a bit better, like flu clinics, things like that, in areas that I can help in partnership with the health department. But implementing Kerwin will be a huge focus of our time on the council because it requires a coordination between county government and the school system and the state and the accountability boards. So in that, we are predominantly responsible for the funding of it, but we have to make sure we're delivering that funding. And so far, we have. We are, the recommended state number was, I think, 620 million, and we did 624 million. And that is record funding for our schools. And we have put in more special educators, we have put in more mental health supports, we have put in more teachers in the classroom, because all of those are critical to a child's success. The other piece that this council will deal with is our general plan, which is the most boring name for one of the most important documents that we do. And really, it's our community planning document. How do we want to live? What services do we want available? Where do we want them? How do we want to think about our parks? How are we going to deliver our fire stations? You know, we've talked a lot about children. When you think about a child, you have to think about the whole child. What are they doing after school? What type of environment are they living in? And those are the things that we are tasked with really laying out in this plan. So they've done the listening sessions. They've done draft chapters and more listening. They're going to put the whole thing, Department of Planning and Zoning will put the whole thing together and then file it to council. And then the council will do listening sessions because it is so important that we engage with the community. And we cannot wait for people to come into us. We have to go out to the community and engage with people where they are. Because if you wait, you are not getting the full community. And so what I'm looking at over the next 4 years is continuing to be out in the community, meeting my constituents where they are, and hearing the issues that face them, and coming up with shared solutions. It's not, oh, this is my solution for you. This is our solution that we are working on together. And so that's really what I'm focused on the next 4 years.
How about you, Bill? Your turn.
I took the 668-page budget for the school system that was presented in 2023. And the good news is, except for the turgid language they wrote it, the Kerwin blueprint increases are not going to be a problem for funding. Currently, it's more than adequate, and no additional funding will be needed. However, I will take issue on saying that when the school board and the school system asked for $748 million, and that the county government, the executive and the county council, cut it back below 700. I don't think that was a good idea. I don't know how you can say, I need 748 million, I'm only going to get 686 million, but I'm fully funded. When we have the gap in the achievement for minority students, when we have white and Asian students that aren't doing particularly well. The figures I gave you for Cradle Rock, only 53% of the Asian students are meeting their academic goals. I'm an engineer by training. I understand math. And if somebody asks for 748 million and they get 50 million less than that, how can they be fully funded? And it's our job as the county council to make sure that those resources are ready. We have had an adequate public facilities ordinance since, I believe, 1991. That was supposed to keep our kids from being in overcrowded schools. It has failed miserably. And it will fail again if we don't do something different than we're doing now. And coming up with a general plan that doesn't cover all of the bases and an adequate public facilities ordinance is not going to fix the problem. It's time to get out of la-la land and start doing the blocking and tackling we need to do to make sure our children are being educated properly. We're paying for champagne, we're getting beer.
All right, finish there?
Yep.
Okay, just to intercept here, here comes the Southern Howard County Civic Association Secretary. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Midone. I'm the secretary for the association. And this is my husband, Marco, who's a member at large.
Yes, hello, I'm Marco Midone, member at large.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming out. This is Ms. Christina Rigby, Mr. Bill Campbell. We're in the process of the forum. So we'll continue. Anybody else has any issues that they would like, questions they would like to ask?
Actually, I do, and I'm trying to think of a way to articulate it properly so it becomes a question. But we're talking about explosive populations coming into the county. Several years ago, probably 10 or 15 years ago, I know that the per capita per household could not exceed 7 people. My new neighbors live next, they have just moved in the summer. I think there are 8 of them living in the building, in the house. You know, they're lovely people, but I'm wondering if that is ever going to be enforced, to say as a realtor, you can't have 7, they may all be related, but it's not a parent-child relationship. It may be a cousin, or however the family nucleus works these days. So there doesn't seem to be an enforcement of how many persons can live in a particular house, and the relationships to the person who owns the house. And then we're talking about escalating, you know, populations in the school kids, you know, that we can't house them, or we can't put them in a stone structure that's in one place because of these numbers, and so therefore we have to have trailers. So I'm wondering, in the big scheme of planning, what are we doing to limit these things that we can't control? Obviously, I've heard both Mr. Campbell talk about sanctuary counties. I've heard Adam Kittleman talk about sanctuary counties. They're not far off, and they're thinking of supporting sanctuary because they think would be, lack of a better term, uncivilized people if we don't allow people to come into the county. But obviously, not being able to control the number of people coming in the county is affecting the county in ways that we're having trouble discussing. We've already discussed areas not being kept up. We've already discussed kids not getting proper education because of the numbers of children trying to be educated in different areas. So in the planning of the county or the new development, what are you going to do to sort of kind of curb all of these things to kind of bring it back home to the early, when this community was being developed in the 1970s, when we didn't have those issues?
Okay, Christina, can you go first with that, and then we're going to put Mr. Bill Campbell on the spot?
Sure. So the situation's a little challenging to sort of parse through, because if it's an unlicensed rental, then we absolutely do go out and do that kind of code enforcement, and that would be through Department of Inspections, licenses, and permits. And if that's an issue, I'm happy to follow up with you. And so there's that piece. If they own the home and it's their property, then there's some other property rights that are constitutionally protected, and that we have to honor there. And then in terms of, I just think that we really have to look at the challenges of today. In the 70s, we had different problems, and now we have our current issues, and that's how we really need to be looking forward. So I think when we look at the general plan, it's I would love to do the type of exercise that Montgomery County did, where they looked at all the children in their school system, where they're coming from. They anonymize the data. It's really kept within DPZ. And then you really know where the kids live, where they're coming from, what the challenges are, and you're able to build a plan around that. Because Cradle Rock, for example, is over capacity. But when's the last time you had a new house built in Cradle Rock? So we have a lot of turnover happening. But we have to be looking at this issue with the whole picture, because I think if you get really zoomed in, it's not giving you all the information you need to solve the problem. So when it comes to, we talked the general plan about what we're going to do about that, and I think we need to do that exercise where we look at where our kids are coming from, and then manage from there. Because once you have the data, then you can build a plan. But until then, it's not enough.
And we haven't had a real plan in over 10 years. Okay? It's real simple. most real big rules in life are simple, and one of the things that's really simple is for every 500 residences, whether they're a one-bedroom efficiency or they're a McMansion, you get, for 500 residences, you get 200 students. It's not rocket science. It happens all the time, and I'm on my third generation of children. I've got 6 preschoolers in my court right now in the 10 homes, and we'll soon have more. And so I think the vision that we've had on concentrating on new construction is flawed. We ought to look at the total population of housing. And if we don't get this under control, the situation is going to get worse with our kids in overcrowded schools. I believe people should have property rights and should be able to do pretty much as they want with their property as long as it fits within planning and zoning. However, if we don't do something right now, maybe we ought to have a moratorium for a couple of years on construction for residences. We're drowning. Remember, when you get in the airplane, what do they tell you in the safety briefing? When the oxygen mask falls in front of your face, put it on. You can't help anybody if you pass out. So we have to care for the people we have right now. And I'm not going to wear a hair shirt over keeping the masses away from us. It won't keep them away. When we have recessions, there isn't new construction of housing anyway. It ebbs and flows. So I mean, we've gotten to the point so far that we're in extremis. We're in extremis, and we need to do something that will stop the influx.
Is there anybody who would like to piggyback or ask a question?
But yeah, I have a new question. Where's the funding for the Kerwin plan? Where's that coming from?
Well, I think that you've heard Mr. Campbell say we are meeting those sort of state projections. They projected us at 620 and we funded at 624.
So it's coming from the state?
No.
No, that's the county portion. I mean, the vast majority you have, so you have to, when you look at education funding, you have to look at the general fund because we have other funds that are sort of protected funds like water, sewer, because those are not the most exciting projects. And I think it is very important that we have those protected funds to make sure that when you flush, it goes all the way to Little Tucson Reclamation Plant. And when you turn on the tap, you have safe drinking water. So when you look at the general fund, that's where that comes from. So that's the 51% of our general fund that goes to our school system at present.
Mr. Campbell?
Well, the proposed budget that the school board put in was $748 million for county funding, which is less than that. The state was going to give matching funds of $303 million. And because the county cut its funds, the state cut their funds, their matching. So when there's a reduction in the county funds, there's a reduction. And then we had other, which is $11.6 million, which was money left over from the prior year that hadn't been spent. But we're talking about $1 billion business here. And what I bring, I've been the chief financial officer for the U.S. Coast Guard, the chief financial officer for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and the chief financial officer for Amtrak. I know how to find money, and I promise you if I'm elected, I will go through the budget line by line. I will make sure, I will zero base the budget, and I will make sure that everything we're spending our money on is appropriate. The U.S. Coast Guard I brought up. The county has more people in public affairs than the U.S. Coast Guard did. And the U.S. Coast Guard had relationships with over 150 countries. The U.S. Congress and the rest of the administration. So I think that we need to go in and look and say, is this the most important use for the money? If it is not, let's put it aside. School construction, $98 million this year. County construction, $148 million. So the county buildings, the rec centers and all that, the fires, they're more important than getting kids out of unsafe trailers? Not in my book.
Does that number include water and sewer projects?
I have no idea. I'll have to look at
Okay,
it, but
Marco and
you should know that.
anything to add?
It's, the number sounded off, so that's why I wanted to follow up with you based on what you had said with your words.
Okay,
I just have a question for Mr. Campbell. Those dismal proficiency testing for the schools, is that pre-COVID or after?
That's that's 2018, 2019. They have not published, and they won't, they have the data. They're not going to publish it till January 2023. Because I think what they're going to find, like a lot of other states, is going to be so abysmal that literally effluent will hit the ventilator.
Our kindergarten readiness scores have been very bad for a while, and actually, and I wanted to follow up, Jackie. I think that one thing that we could do, every time you give birth at Howard County General, you're given a folder of all this stuff. So, are those talk with me materials in there? You know, so I will follow up with the hospital, and I'll follow up with Bonnie Bricker.
They're supposed to be there, but
Okay.
you need the pediatricians
Yes.
to be, I mean,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
parents
Because they're
really count.
visiting every week.
Right, they count on the
Weeks.
pediatricians to know, and they don't know very much about that stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
To piggyback on this large topic about sanctuary state or sanctuary county. Well, first of all, by my accent alone, maybe not by my looks, but by my accent, everybody knows that I did not born here. I migrated here. It's good to help people, but when you inviting people to a place, even into your own home, how are we going to close, house, and feed these people when we bring them in? Plus, they will come with children. So that's a big issue to look at. We just don't want to bring them. As an immigrant, I would not come here to pick crap. No way in hell. Neither would I tell any of my relatives to come here to do that job if they want to come here. So, that's an issue for Mr. Campbell, Ms. Rigby, so for us to have some discussion. So, please engage, because unless more information, better decisions. That's how I see it. So let's engage in the conversation of sanctuary state or sanctuary county, because I always say, Christina is not only making a decision that would benefit or to do anything with for this particular area. When she makes a decision, the whole county would be affected. Likewise, the other 4 county council, when they make a decision, it's not only for their specific area would benefit. The whole county would benefit. So let's engage in this sanctuary migration topic.
First of all, I'd like to ask, currently, is everyone in agreement that's currently on the board that sanctuary counties are a positive?
Well, I'd say I think that it's probably 4 in agreement.
Are you one of the agreement? Or?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
We gotta know how to feed, clothe, and house them, plus provide education for the kids.
Well, I don't know, I have long been, I would say, frustrated by the term sanctuary, because there's no sanctuary. My husband's from a different country. We looked at, very early on in our marriage moving there, and a new home secretary came in and they changed the laws and I couldn't go. Unless I had like $80,000 in cash, which as like a 24-year-old, and now I do not. So I know how tenable that situation is. I thought that we'd be able to go and live with my mother-in-law and support her and do that, and then no, they changed the law and all our plans changed. And so in 2016, my husband was not yet a citizen, and I got on him very quickly because I said, you need to get this protection. We need this protection for our family. And we had access to that. And fundamentally, what the Liberty Act is about the right to privacy. It's about protecting people in our community, and not just, it's not people who come here, it's the people who are here. When you call the police, they should be asking you questions about the crime that you experienced, or what the situation is. They shouldn't be taking up that time enforcing federal policy, asking you about your immigration status. They need to be focused on the local issue with our local resources. So that's ultimately what the Liberty Act is about to me. And when you look at the data, crime has been down 21% since that bill passed. And that is, anyone here can Google it. And so we want people working with our police department. And so that's why I think that bill's important, and that's why I voted for it, because I want people working together to solve our local issues.
What's your thoughts about that, Mr. Campbell?
Well, I'm old-fashioned. When I went to school and learned civics, I was taught that we have laws, and we have to obey the laws, enforcing all laws. Now, are we going to have a police state in Howard County if the referendum to get Sanctuary County overturned? No. Most people who are here illegally will never see a policeman. Or if they do see a policeman, it's not going to be something where they're grilled on where they come from. So the enforceability is nil, but it's the principle. We have to stand for something or we stand for nothing. If we don't agree with the immigration laws, we have an avenue to change that. But we choose not to. We choose to just say, we're not going to obey the law. Well, there are lots of laws I don't like, but I obey them because they're the laws that my fellow citizens decided were important. And so I am not in favor of Sanctuary County.
So you would prefer our officers, our local officers, to spend their time investigating someone's immigration status instead of investigating local?
No, I would, if they have information from ICE that somebody is on their watch list and they pull that person over, they should notify the Department of Homeland Security. They're not spending any time. They do this nationally now. If there's a stolen car in Pennsylvania and it shows up in Maryland and they stop it and it's on the All Points Bulletin, they arrest the person in the car and seize the car. They're not going out looking for these victims. They are merely, they stop, they do what they would do with you or me. They run our plate, they look at our driver's license, they run that. And if somebody came up and they were wanted for violent crimes, you would want them to ignore that?
No, that's not how that law works. If they were wanted for violent crime, they would be, if they had a warrant for their arrest, they would be arrested.
Well, that's what we're talking about. If they have a warrant from the Department of Homeland Security, why wouldn't, it's almost like you're saying that our police are going out there harassing innocent folks. I find that specious, to be frank.
No, not at all. I'm saying that I would like our officers focused on protecting our residents from property crime, from violent crime, from those kinds of things. That's what I want them focusing their time on. That's all I'm saying.
Well, then they will, if they find people that are on the watch list or have warrants, they should arrest them.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And we work with our federal marshals to do that.
Anybody else to piggyback?
Well, I'd just like to point out that there is also part of the law is you can ask for asylum. So if you show up here and you pass the preliminary, hearing before your asylum case gets decided, you're not illegal, even if you don't have any papers.
Right. You have to enter by a port of entry.
That's right. So asylum is part of the situation.
Okay, Mr. Walsh?
Is it fair to ask the citizens of Howard County to pay for the services to illegal aliens? Is it fair to take the tax money of the citizens of Howard County for services which are needed by illegal aliens? Is it?
I would say many of the services that are provided by Howard County or our Department of Social Services, that many undocumented immigrants would be ineligible for. So they are not receiving those kinds of benefits, though they are paying taxes through their employment taxes.
So you're saying it is fair or is not fair? It
I'm
is
saying-
fair or not fair?
I'm saying you're talking about a situation that is predominantly not happening.
Okay,
From
so
the county
none of our
side.
taxes go to pay for services for illegal aliens, that's what you're saying?
I'm saying when you look at county dollars and when you look at the services provided by the county, that there are provisions in place when it comes from federal dollars, and those federal dollars have strings attached to them, and then they're prohibited from utilizing many of those services. So if you're talking about a community resource where there are not those things, and it's a church, pantry, things like that, undocumented immigrants are eligible for that type of
I'm
support.
not talking about church pantries, I'm talking about taxpayer-funded things, not charitable institutions. Mr.
So
Campbell?
like the CAC, the Community Action Council, which is funded by the county government.
I'm not so sanguine that we're not providing some resources to people here who are here illegally. If we don't ask the question, do you belong here? Are you entitled to these things? You're obviously going to have some people that, what percentage that is, I have no idea. But to think that this is free, that it's federal money, or it's state money, or it's county money, or it's all your money.
It's all
No,
taxpayer money.
let's stop it. It's open question now. Any question from anybody that would like to ask? Candidates, go ahead, Brent.
This is a very personal setting, but it's perfect for this sort of thing. As many of you know, I've been advocating many years for APFO school-related items. I got a great opportunity to be on a task force in 2015 related to that. And during that task force, we had a developer take my uncle out of his home. He died mysteriously, and the developer's attorney declared himself power of attorney. He got a demolition permit in the middle of the session to demolish the family home while my aunt was visiting her children out of state and being threatened if she came home. During the APFO sessions, they actually halted the sessions in order to issue demolition permits on our property from a developer on the other side of the table. And the chairs allowed this and were aware of this during the factor and spent 4 days demolishing our historic home here up the street while we were in court for trespassing and demolition and stealing all the belongings of my aunt. Here we are 7 years later. We're about to go through another APFO review. The people are going to be selected by the DPZ under the administration's purview. They're going to come up with something and they're going to present it to the council. How is the council going to review if they feel that the APFO task force has been misrepresented, bad actors have been involved, and we see many of the same people that were involved in this very incident right now working on the general plan? What reassurances can the public have that when this new general plan comes in front of you and all the zoning recommendations, that you are going to be cognizant of all these items and be able to protect us from the extremes that have occurred in the past?
Before we go further, I'm out to tune with DPC right now because of COVID and what went on from it. I'm just cranking up again to start, but who's the head of DPC now?
Director Amy Gowan.
Was she there 10 years ago, or she's new? She took over from Mr. Bowden?
Yes.
And so was she under the director of Marshall McLaughlin and that? When did she come in?
Don't know about Marsha. I know that she was appointed during Mr. Kittleman's term as a deputy under Val.
For future meeting, I may have to invite her in.
Yeah.
To the community, because we don't have no more. We need to have a friendly, civil chat with her,
Yeah.
so we could come up with better decisions. Right now, I'm not saying she's making bad decisions, but lack of information. You make information based on the decision. You make decisions based on the information you have. But the more information you get, the better decision you make. So that's the reason I will have to look into that next year.
I think she was here when we had the Route 1 meeting in, I don't know, I had a very tiny meeting in a like car seat carrier, so it must have been winter 2017.
Yeah,
Do you
maybe that's a
remember?
long time before COVID time.
Yeah, oh, no, I'm saying that's, so I
Yeah.
think she's been there
Yeah,
and
but
been
you
out
know,
here, but let's
we
get
are
out
out
here.
in June and
Yeah.
see each other. We don't even know what each other look like since COVID time.
Or even half mask.
Yeah, I know, especially me. But I told you guys why. Okay. So go ahead, please, and start with Christina.
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier about the adequate public facilities ordinance. It's horribly flawed. It doesn't nearly cover all of the things that we need to do. We basically look at some traffic issues, I think, around intersections, then we look at school overcrowding. If it worked, we wouldn't have overcrowded schools, would we? We wouldn't have bad traffic intersections, which we do. So my feeling is that we need to look at the broad range of things that affect the community's life and quality of life. I've said this before at other forums. The World Health Organization recommends that we have 3 hospital beds per 1,000 residents. That would mean Howard County would need 1,000 beds. We have 255 before COVID. I think that Howard County General rejiggered things to, keep COVID patients separate so there aren't 2 to a room and so forth. So probably less than that. We are seeing an uptick in crime, not an uptick, an explosion in crime. And the Federal Bureau of Investigation recommends that communities have 2 sworn police officers for every 1,000 residents. That would be 660 cops. I don't know how many of them are sworn officers, but the entire Howard County Police Department is 480 souls. So then you look at things like the quality of drinking water that Ms. Rigby mentioned earlier, and you look at the quality, the effluent coming out of the waste treatment plants. Just to the north of us, Baltimore County has a tragedy going on because of lack of maintenance at their treatment plant. Baltimore County is not a third world nation. They have chosen not to spend the money on waste treatment, so now they're dumping contaminated effluent into the bay. We have to make sure that we pick the right things, and if we pick the right things, it is going to be more difficult to have shoddy development. I'm not completely anti-development, but I'm anti-dumb development. And if we are going to have areas of the county that can grow, but right now, I look at anything east of Route 29, I don't know that I want a single thing put in there till we get all of these things fixed. The first thing to get fixed, as I'm going back to schools, is I want a fully funded plan over the next 8 to 10 years to get all of the kids out of temporary classrooms, mobile classrooms. So those are the things I think we need to do. That's going to cause huge discomfort for developers and others. But if we don't take control of our community, we deserve what we're going to get, and it won't be pretty. I've seen this movie before. It does not have a happy ending.
Okay, Christina?
Sure. Well, there's so much that I agree with Mr. Campbell about that. The adequate public facilities ordinance is often looked at as a way to say, oh, developers have to wait to build. But really, the purpose of that wait period, the whole purpose, is for us to do the work, the government work, the community good work, to build the schools, to invest in our roads, to make sure that it is ready for that development. That's the purpose of that wait period. And if we don't use that wait period wisely, we are wasting our time. So I think, over the last 4 years, we've done $350 million, I think, in school construction. We've renovated and expanded Hammond High. We've built High School 13, and we have built Talbot Springs Elementary School, which is in right outside the Owen Brown community and takes students from Hopewell. It is an incredible new school. I really recommend everyone check it out. But we need to do more of them. We need to be building our schools. We need to be using that time wisely, thoughtfully, and effectively. And when it comes to our intersections, right now, I agree. I'm against dumb development and I'm against dumb planning. Because all we do with these intersections is widen them.
By the way, I should ask this question. I'm not educated on this part of it, but just to bring this to life, bring it to life. Who pay for the infrastructure, like the roads and stuff in Montgomery County, in PG County when there is a development? Taxpayers or the developer? I just would like to know who's paying for that here compared to those two counties that is near to us.
Well,
I think there was a rumor, and like rumor has it, always something, part does be true, part does be lie. There's some truth and some lies. I heard some of the road and the infrastructure are being paid for by the developer. Are we doing that here?
yes. If the developer is building a community and they're putting in a new road, they're paying for that. They're paying for the water sewer hookups. That is their responsibility because that's what they're doing.
What about contributing to the main road? Like, let's say in my area when they were doing Deer Springs and these meadows, they didn't contribute no money that, to my knowledge, to do any work on that old Scottsville road. And with so many people in that area, and more is coming in at about there, the road still remain undulating and narrow because sometimes I do walk there. There is no sidewalk on the whole of old Scottsville Road. So,
It's just that multi-use pathway portion.
yes,
Right.
fragmented.
Yeah.
So how can we make that continuation or whatever? Don't you think some of the developer just exploited the neighborhood to fill their pockets? So let's have a discussion on that. Because I'm sure other areas are being affected like this.
The issue is, what is the public good? And when I first moved to Howard County, Columbia, where I chose to live, the developer built all the roads and infrastructure, the sidewalks, and then they were built to county standards and they were turned over to the county. My understanding is now that when the developer doesn't have to build to the county standard, they can build much narrower, unsafer roads, and they don't turn them over to the county. It's going to be up to the residents to fix the road. Is that a good public policy?
So this is actually a great conversation because it's something that we wrestle with here in the county. My colleague David Yeoman, when we were dealing with the milk producers development over off of Leisure, he said, look, if you wanted to have opinions on this and get involved, you need to do it in 2001. And I said, David, junior in high school in 2001. I was trying to get in college. And that's because it all goes back to those general plans. And so the issue on these roads is the Department of Public Works, for a lot of years, I couldn't tell you how many years, but certainly before my time, has preferred in a new development that goes in by right where someone owns the property, they have this underlying zoning, it's been determined, and the law allows them to build under these conditions, that the Department of Public Works asks the residents to fund of that area to fund and cover the cost of maintenance to that road. But then for those residents there, they're paying county taxes, but then their very local neighborhood roads are not getting paved, they're not getting plowed. These are burdens that the residents have to take on themselves, and it leads to a lot of issues down the line, especially if the HOA is poorly managed, because the only reason an HOA exists is to manage those community problems that need sort of collective solution and collective funding. So I think that when we look at what is being built in the future, my preference would be to have public roads, because if you're a resident of Howard County and you're paying those taxes, it ends up as this horrible sort of gotcha years down the road. And even in townhouse communities, older townhouse communities that have been built for
50 years.
yeah, that the parking spots are the HOA's responsibility. That the HOA has to pave the parking spots, and that even if it's on a county road, the county will pave and manage and maintain the county portion, but that all the parking spots are the resident portion. And so I think getting to a place where we have a lot more, I can't find the word, but it's about expectations and predictability for residents to know sort of what they're entering into and what their responsibilities are and what they need to know. I think that is one of the best
It's a flim flam. The developers come in and they're able to get away with the cheap. They put a narrow road in that's not built to county standards. And they move off. That doesn't seem to be very fair, particularly since they're paying the 3.21% piggyback tax, and they're paying our very dear real estate property tax. I think that we should have public roads. And if a developer wants to come in, they've got to build to the public road standard. And then if the county agrees that that's to the standard, they turn over the road to the county. And then the taxpayers who are paying in for road maintenance get their service.
Well, coming back to that, this is both Christina and you. People coming into the county or go to buy anywhere. Like you said, USA is not a third world country. People are here supposed to be at least high school educated. Don't you think it's their responsibility to get to know the area that they're moving into and get educated about buying and selling and the typography of the land and the structure of the home or whatever? That's their responsibility to know before they buy, to make that decision. They just go buying without knowing what it entails or what's there.
Well, to that point, I think a lot is, we looked for our house in Howard County in Columbia for 9 months. There wasn't a thing I didn't think I knew about our residents and when we bought the house. The day we moved in, the jet flew over our house to land on BWI, and the whole house rattled, and I was like, oh my God, what did we just do? But we had no one said, and in fact, I wouldn't even put it by our beloved realtor, who didn't say a word. And believe it or not, in that time, we never heard a plane go over. Maybe once in the 9 months did we ever hear a plane go over. Now I can set my watch by the planes coming over.
Do you live near Lake Elkhorn?
Yes.
But in this present day situation, coming back, that's strange because I didn't do that. I did some research.
That's
Strange, but
because
in today's world, we should encourage them, before they buy, to make some research, and then it would be on even steam.
I guess my point is some information is readily available about the area, and some is a deep, dark secret, like those planes. You can't hide the planes
That would not
now.
be in the area. The flight patterns are controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration.
Right.
The only way you'd know this, you'd have to get a subscription from the government printing office for the Federal Register that comes out weekly. That has a list of all of the regulations, and it would say that we're changing the flight plan. I've lived here since '74. If I'm in my house and the windows are closed, I don't hear the planes. But where you are, they're coming down to make their final approach.
Right. And now, for the,
Well,
those
apart
extra
from the
stuff.
flight, what about the flooding and the other things that would affect the area, like the floodplain, or the house was built on with flimsy material and all this sort of stuff? And then we could go to your question.
Oh, I was just
Oh,
gonna,
her. She did.
Go ahead.
Okay.
no, I was just gonna wonder, how long is this gonna go?
Okay, let's.
I just meant that, are those,
Okay.
is this gonna be,
Okay, all right.
it goes to 8:30, then are they gonna get a
Maybe
chance
8:30.
to talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
How are we going to handle that? Is there any future plan to educate future buyer on do some research into the area where you buy before you purchase, and then, or you purchase before and then scream after, which?
Well, I mean, a home is, one of the biggest investments of your life. It's where you tie everything to. It's where you put your roots. It's where you celebrate your holidays. It's more than just a building. It's meaningful. It's a house. It's not just a home. It's important. And so, one thing that the county does is our homeowner education or home buyer education workshops, and I think that we could do a lot more of that. Those are from the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is a much more executive controlled arena because they direct the departments and we write the legislation. But even with that, I still think that there's more that we could do, especially for first-time home buyers. There's so little that you know going into it, and the housing situation now is so desperate that people are waiving inspections. Because there's nowhere to live.
Okay. Bill, you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I don't know that you're ever going to fix the problem because people are basically trusting. They want to believe what they're being told. They're trusting. And they get victimized. And I think that there's only so much that the county government can do on that. But getting back to being victimized on road construction by developers, I think that's a legitimate place for us. I'd like to follow on with something you mentioned about money for construction for schools.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
To get the kids out of the mobile classrooms is going to cost us in construction $8 billion. $8 billion. Nobody is bringing this up because they haven't figured out a tax to raise to pay for it. The Howard County public school system has asked for help from our state delegation in Annapolis for $500 million in deferred maintenance. Now, deferred maintenance means we have made a conscious choice not to replace roofs, not to replace HVAC, not to replace doors and windows that are rotted and rusted and so forth. That's on us. And I have gone through our budget. In my opinion, we do not have to raise taxes to pay for this. But we're going to need a radical change in our spending habits. For instance, we gave a few weeks ago, County Executive Ball announced $60 million for 12 grants for community services. I'm not saying those are bad ideas. The community organizations, the volunteer organizations do a lot of good work. But we ought to look and see if that's more important than building an elementary school.
So I think it'd be helpful for everyone who's watching to know that we have two budgets. We have our capital budget and we have our operating budget. So our capital budget builds the schools and our operating budget staffs, our capital budget for the county does a lot more than just that, but when we're in the education realm, that's what we're looking at. So our capital budget builds the schools and our operating budget funds the teachers and supplies and everything that's needed within those schools. So when we're looking at this mountain of maintenance that we've inherited, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we are going after those schools. We are renovating them. We are building them and rebuilding them in the cases where they need it. We are talking to the state. They are passing bills at the state to get us that funding because we need our state partners. Years ago, the state used to manage much more of the education budget, and they have put it on to the locals at every turn. So it is very important that the locals work together to say, hey, living in an educated community is a state issue and we need state support. And so when we look at our capital, we have been going at it, and we are competitive for these pass-through grants. And I've been really, it's been hard work. No one really thought that we could do it. It's pretty impossible what we've done to do 2 high schools, which are the most expensive type of school because they are the largest type of school and need the most land, and an elementary school in 4 years.
Evidently, we're not doing enough because in the letter that the Board of Education or the school system sent to our delegation, it said that we were losing state money because we didn't have matching grants.
Yes, so then the pass-through grant, that was, then I don't know if you saw that letter and then the other letter, but basically these are matching grants that we're pursuing. We're pursuing healthy
But we're not paying enough money to get qualified for those grants.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, there's one more piece that's really important. We talked about those community partners and the early childhood education piece. Well, that money that Mr. Campbell just talked about, it goes to those partners to help students and other people in our community outside of school hours, because a kid is living in our community for more than just the 8:30 to 3:05 that they're in a school, and they need support, and they need places to go, and they need after-school help, and they need those things so that they can thrive.
So if there's a grant that's given that doesn't do that, that doesn't support children after school, it's subject to be cut. So
Okay.
Well, no, I think we need to support adults with disabilities.
I was just going to say, when it comes to education, it's just an observation. But there are countries all over the world that do so much with so little. And it is because, and they said, you know, they have well-educated, just science, math, we all know this. The difference is that there's the emphasis on education from childhood, right, in the home. And how do you develop that? They have people that are poorer than the poorest people we have here. The thing is, there is an attack on education in our country, an attack on facts, all that means. If we could maybe think that we can operate with less money, or we should get money where there is money, right? That's one thing. But the grassroots, the pamphlets at time of birth, the keeping in touch with with parents, giving them the support, the idea that the school day does not end, the teaching does not end at the end of school day. It's almost the start of the next round of teaching when you go home.
Yeah.
That is all community support. The government, everybody needs to get behind that. It's less about money. It's more about caring. It's more about partnership. It's more about thinking if me and my husband are earning a certain amount of money, what we can provide to our child is very different than what a single mother can provide to her child. So we have to, you know, where much is given, much is expected. There needs to be a lot more in support.
Okay.
And I just think if you look at other countries, you see it.
If we could stay here all night and have discussion, but you know our time is limited. So I'm glad that we are all here tonight to have a open discussion. And now that we know the candidates that are running for our county council, and 2 of them here for delegate and 1 for
school board.
My conclusion is, now that you know them more, the Southern Harbor County Civic Association does not endorse any candidate. The decision is yours. So with that in mind, thanks for coming, and the room is available until 8:30. We can have personal discussion. It's yours.
Did you want the delegates to come up, or we're just doing open discussion?
No, you guys can talk or whatever, and then we, at 8:30, I'll turn the room to work, and we go home.